Welcome to Classroom TZ, and today we are going to check the third topic of Form 3. It's going by the name Colonial Economy. This is our third topic. After discussing the first topic, establishment of colonialism. The second one, it was administrative system, colonial administrative systems. And the third, it's called the colonial economy. In the first topic, we discussed on how colonialism was established in Africa, the method, the tactics, the stages on the establishment of colonialism. We checked the case of agents of colonialism, the issue of scramble for and the partition of Africa, the Berlin Conference, and also we checked the reactions of Africans, resistance and the collaboration. After that, we concluded the colonialists won and they established the colonial rule in Africa. They started colonizing Africa. Remember, in the cause of why they came to colonize Africans, it was because of industrial capitalism. Still the continuation of capitalism model production. So they were advanced up to industrial capitalism. Industrial capitalism needed them to go to another level, that was imperialism, and that is colonialism. So imperialism or colonialism is the result or the product of industrial capitalism due to demands created by industrial capitalism. So how are they going to get the demands of industrial capitalism? They establish colonial rule. After establishing colonial rule in the first topic, the second topic it is colonial administrative systems. This colonial administrative system is on how to administer the colony, how to control the colony. Remember, there is a close relationship between political and economic activities, and sometimes it is political that control economic activities. If we don't have good guidelines of political systems, actually we cannot have good economic activities. We cannot have good environment for doing those economic activities. So after understanding that, they laid down the foundation of political activities, that was the administrative systems, and those were direct rule by German, indirect rule by British, and the assimilation policy by France and sometimes Portugal. So they colonized, they took Africa in the first topic. Secondly, they established the colonial rule, and the third now, that is colonial economy. So here they started to get back the demands or the needs of industrial capitalism. So here in colonial economy, we are going to check mainly economic activities done by colonialists while they were colonizing Africa, and these economic activities were mainly to meet the demands of industrial capitalism. Also, I can declare that they may be the heart of history of Form 3, colonial economy. Out of that may be also the establishment of colonialism. If you are good in establishment of colonialism and good in colonial economy, the rest of two topics, that is colonial social services and colonial administrative systems, are those just normal topics. So please pay your attention in this topic, colonial economy, and also it seems the longest topic. We are going to discuss a lot of things, very, very big topic. So without wasting time, I'm your teacher, Shadrach Swila, from Classroom TZ, and let's check about colonial economy. First of all, we have the content. What are we going to discuss? That's very important to understand. We are going to check the issue of establishment of colonial economy, how that colonial economy is established, and here I'll check the introduction, the meaning of colonial economy. After there, we are going to check sectors of colonial economy, that's the pivot of our topic, and then we are going to check colonial labor. These are the issues we are going to discuss in the topic of establishment of colonial economy. So let's check. The number one is the establishment of colonial economy. Then here we have the meaning of colonial economy. It said that the colonial economy simply refers to the extensions of metropolitan economy that was established in Africa. in the colonies, by the way, the colonial masters with the aim of saving for the colonial interest. So in colonial economy, we refer the number of economic activities, different economic activities established by colonialists in the colony. Why? In order to meet the interest of their colonial masters or their metropolitan countries. So we have three things. It was established by colonialists, where it was established in the colony. Why? Because they wanted to meet the demands of their economy. And the demands are those we discussed there in industrial capitalism in the last topic of Form 2. That is a brief meaning of, or brief introduction of colonial economy. And then a colonial economy that was established in Africa during colonial period involved various sectors. There were different sectors during colonial economy. Example of those sectors were agriculture, colonial labor, colonial industries, as well as mining sectors, but also as well as trade. These were a number of sectors that were under colonial economy. When we say sectors, we refer to the activities done by the colonialists in the colony as economic activities during colonialism. Among these sectors, the major one, it was agriculture and the colonial labor. Agriculture and the colonial labor were the major economic activities that were practiced by colonialists during the colonial economy. So, objective of colonial economy. Why colonial economy in Africa? Why they established the colonial economy? Number one, it aimed at ensuring constant supply of raw materials from Africa to the European industries. So actually we are referring the demands of industrial capitalism. The first demand of there, it was to get raw material. So here in the objective, why colonial economy, it was aimed to get raw materials. Why raw materials? For the industries in Europe. It aimed to make Africa the market of European manufactured goods. Remember again, they are in demand of industrial capitalism. They are looking for the market. Why market? Because of the competition of industries in Europe. It reached the time all European countries, they have industries and they are producing goods. So they got to fix the market. How can we expand the market? They wanted to get market outside of Africa. Outside of Europe. So they came in Africa to at least to secure market of their goods produced in Europe. To sustain the colonial expenditure, it was done for the rising revenue of the colony. To sustain the colonial expenditure here, after establishment of colonialism, then colonial rule which acted as a government in Africa. Then as we know, if you are running governmental activities, you need revenue to run the administrative activities. Example, you need the money for salaries, you need the budget, you need to repair the cars, to buy the transport, and the other cases. So how are they going to get revenue to run those activities? How much they can keep depending to the mother country. So to reduce dependence from mother country, they said we're supposed to have a source of economy or source of revenue in the colony. So they established different activities to raise the revenue of the colony in order to sustain the expenditure or to run the expenditure in the colony. Getting the area of settling the excess population from Europe, especially unemployed one. Again, they wanted an empty place where they can dump or they can settle unemployed population from Europe. As we know, it is much expensive to feed or to control, to give them social services and other services unemployed people. To have high number of unemployed people in the country is just like the same to have children in your family. They are adult, they are feeding high, but they are not producing. They are not contributing anything in that family. So the burden is going to the parents. So also in country-wise, if we have the population that is unemployed population, it means they are contributing nothing to the country economy. The time they are contributing nothing to the country economy, they are using other people economy to run their life. Example, if they are sick, they are going to the hospital, they need medicine. Remember, those medicine are provided by government. If are provided by government is not printing money for those medicine. Government should collect money from the citizens, that through tax and their sources. So if they're not paying tax, if they're not working, it means they are not paying tax. When they go to the hospital, they are using they are using others people taxes, and that is a very, very big burden to the government. So to ensure the economy is smooth in Europe, they said it is better to have a place where they can dump these people. And maybe why unemployed population? Unemployed population occurred because of the industrial revolution. After discovering machine, some people lost their jobs because machine replaced the human labor. This is what maybe is going to happen there in coming years, as we are now busy in current 2025 in the AIs and this technology of robots. Maybe in later also we can explain the same thing that happened before in industrial capitalism. So to dump unemployed population. Addition that, so if that number 4 it was the aim of colonial economy, in the other language you can say all those Europeans we are seeing in Africa, they were excess population or unwanted population in Europe, that way they came in Africa. That is in another meaning. So if it was like that, there is no need to treat them or take them as the very, very special people. And the same way, like the way you are treating your country people, those who are unemployed, those who say jobless, those poor economy, in their country and them, they are like that status. So the problem is how Africans, we are looking them when they are in Africa, while in their countries, the normal people, and sometimes maybe we can feed them or we can pay them salaries. That was about unemployed population. It aimed to exploiting cheap African labor through forcing them to work long hours but receive low wages. It happened there at the different sectors. Most of Africans, they worked intensively but they paid low wages, so they wanted cheap labor. And why cheap labor from Africa? Cheap labor from Africa because it was expensive to hire Europeans. Most of Europeans' laborers were very expensive comparing to Africans. So that's why they established the colonial economy. And inside of colonial economy, we are going to see colonial labor. Then colonial laborers, they got cheap laborers. Those were objective of colonial economy. Why colonial economy established in Africa? The second case, it is features of colonial economy. How colonial economy was looking like, the appearance, the structure, and the modality, how it was conducted. Colonial economy. So the following are the features of colonial economy. Number 1, it was export-import oriented economy. Export-import oriented economy. So it was two-way. They exported and at the same time they imported. So they exported what? They imported what? From where to where? Number 1, they exported raw material from Africa to Europe. Why raw material from Africa to Europe? Because in Africa we're blessed with the plenty land, so they done agricultural activities and other activities like mining to get raw material. And in Africa, they never intended to develop Africa. That's why they never built industries in Africa, manufactured industries. So after producing, they processed it and they exported outside to Europe, where there were industries for manufacturing of those consumed goods. After that, the second route, it is importation. They import inside. What they imported are the product of manufactured goods. And why they imported back to Africa? Again, to win the market. So, in that way, let's discuss somehow. In that way, Africans, they were producers. Africans, they were market. So what are we getting here? Europeans, they got we can say double benefit. I don't know in the business how are you calling it, but it's a piece of cake benefit, high benefit. The same place where there is resources, and the same place is becoming the market. And the Africans still, they own nothing on that. So they were producers, and then they became buyers, the market. So we built the economy of Europeans in that way. That's why some of historians, they are complaining like the development of current Europe and the other external worlds, it is because of the exploitation they done in Africa. And that was a sign of exploitation in Africa. So that was feature number one, import and export. They exported the raw material, they imported the manufactured goods. Based on the creation of dependent African economy, they created the structure or the system that Africans will never be free in economy until maybe they decided. How they make it? They found us with a barter trade system. Barter trade system, it was a complete system we used in Africa. Then they took away our economy system. They introduced something called the cash economy, monetary system. That is where a problem started. Out of that, they created a situation that we are producing what we are not consuming, and we are consuming what we are not producing. If you are eating what you are not producing, the one who producing what you are eating, he deciding what you're supposed to eat. Example. It reached the time we are putting clothes, and those clothes we are not producing those clothes. So there is a day maybe the manufacturer of clothes, he can say, I'm not producing clothes. So we may go in the street without clothes, because the source we are not owning, or we are not controlling the source. That the system created by colonial economy. So even up today, we are proceeding, I'm seeing eating. We have these GMO products or GMO seeds, the chemical fertilizers. Most of them are from outside. So the question it is, what will happen when those outsider, they say we are not producing more? Or if they give us strict conditions, what will happen? That is a dependent African economy. We should own the source. It was characterized by building processing plant and small-scale industries. Processing plant and small-scale industries. All of us will agree there are levels of industries. So what they built in Africa, they are not those manufactured industry. Example, if you are building industry of producing a box of matches, what is the profit or what the interest you are getting there in match of boxes? Or if you are making industry of producing a laser blade, those are simple and mere commodities that they have very little impact in the country economy. We're supposed to have those big plants that are producing big products. So unfortunately in Africa, they never build those giant plants or giant industries. They build those smaller industries. And the processing plants are those industries that are just making the raw material in a good condition that can be able to be transported for many days without being spoiled. And when to reach the production place, they are still fresh. That are those processing industries. So they are doing fast stage, very, very, very fast stage in production. And after processing, still we cannot consume it because not yet produced. So where were those industries of producing these processed commodities? All of those industries were in Europe. That's a big question. If Europeans were like us too much, why they fail to build industries in their countries? Why they never done that technological transfers from their country to Africa? That's a big question. It was a monoculture agricultural system of production. We are going to check there among all the sector, it is agriculture. And as I said, agriculture was the biggest sector because it paid much, and the result of the demand of industrial capitalism, the issue of raw material. So in agriculture, they done mainly monoculture. The monoculture here means that they planted only single crop in a piece of land. Remember there in Form 1, economic development and the impact in Africa, economic activities and the impact in Africa, we learned about agricultural activities. In pre-colonial agriculture, it was very rare to plant one crop in one piece of land. Most of the time we done intercropping. Why intercropping? To increase the level of production, surplus production. and most of intercropping it were those food crops. But when Europeans came, they introduced the new kind of agricultural system that was monoculture, single crop in a one piece of land. And that single crop, it was the cash crops. And at the point where we said we produced cash crops and we never consumed the cash crops. Example, we produced the coffee. It was so difficult to consume coffee directly from the plant, from the field. Coffee should be processed to change the form from that seeds to another form. That way we can consume. Then we produce coffee and we never ate that coffee, but it transported it to Europe, being manufactured, and then we start to consume the product of coffee. That's the line where we said we produce the what we not own or what we not consume, and we consume the what we are not producing. It was characterized by coercive apparatus. Again, as we discussed today in administrative system. In administrative system, there is legal system. Those legal system were military forces, judiciary, and the police force. So those legal system also they work together with the people in colonial economy to ensure they are reaching the target what they wanted. Example, when the laborers they acting maybe to violate or to resist, the legal system were there to minimize the resistance. Or when the citizens are failing or they don't want to pay taxes, legal system, judiciary or police force or military force were there to ensure people they are paying taxes. So it was characterized by coercive apparatus. Also, it was characterized by construction of physical infrastructure. As we know, we cannot have complete system of economy without having infrastructure. So also they built infrastructure, especially railway, that connected from the coast to the interior of Africa. And that transports were only for transporting, mainly for transporting raw material, laborers, and the manufactured goods from the coast to the interior. It was dominated by whites. The system was owned by Europeans. White were the final say, or Europeans were the final say in this colonial economy. It was characterized by land alienation. Land alienation is the process of taking fertile land from indigenous and leaving those original people without fertile land. That was land alienation. So they alienate different parts of land in Africa, aim to make sure they are getting place for planting their cash crops. Remember, they came from Europe. They never came with their land here. They didn't transport their land from Europe to Africa. They found land in Africa, and they used the force. That is where also we check the role of coercive apparatus to get land. So they alienated land, and mainly by force. It was not by African willing. Example there in Kenya, Northern Ireland. They used the force to make sure they are taking fertile land for their cash crops production. Another one, it was characterized by or based on a money-oriented economy. It was money-oriented economy. To my idea, I think the problem started here. Introduction of money. All kind of slave we have today because of that. That's called the man shilling. So they repressed the barter trade system and they introduced the money-oriented economy or system. So you're supposed to work to get money, you're supposed to have money to buy, you're supposed to have money for different activities in the life. Those were the features of colonial economy. Features of colonial economy. After features of colonial economy, my dear students, let's check techniques or tactics used to introducing and establishing colonial economy in Africa. The following are the methods used. Number one, they use the preservation, simply. Number two, destruction method. And number three, creation method. Listen carefully. In Form 3 and in Form 4, actually in Form 4 levels, there are a number of questions. One of the questions they will ask you, how colonial economy established or introduced in Africa. Number one, we discuss the features. Number two, we discuss the characteristics. And then number three, it is how it was established, how it was started in Africa. It is started in Africa by using preservation, destruction, and creation. So here we have three main points. But the questions, most of the time, they're asking 6 points or 5 points. So where are we getting the list of points? The list of points, we are doing like this. If you ask how colonial economy established, do not use these 3 points at the heading or statement of your sentence. But instead, in preservation, we have some of small point or sub-point that refer to this are the groups of preservation. We're almost like 4 or 5. In distractions also, they distracted something. Those things they distracted are referred at the points, and the creation, they created new things. Those are referred at the points. So in that way, example, if in preservation we have 4 points, distraction you have 4 points, and the creation you have 4 points, we're almost like 12 points. So you have number of points that we can write. So instead of saying they use the preservation, distraction, and creation, in that way you will end your essay by having 3 points, where the essay need you to have 6 points. And also we don't have the kind of essay whereby we are writing point within the point, I mean paragraph within the paragraph. You can't say preservation and within the preservation paragraph you are highlighting those points of preservation. We don't have that structure of essay. So these were the methods used. We are going to discuss it one by one. But by summary, preservation means that there are some of things they preserved. They found the Africans are doing so. They saw it that is good, and they said this is productive to our economy. So they keep doing as Africans were doing. That is preservation. In distractions, they found there are some activities doing or done by Africans. Those activities are not suitable, are not productive to their interest, so they distracted all those activities. That's the distraction method. And lastly is creation method. In the creation method, it means that they come up with new ideas. They found the Africans, they don't have wheat and they need it for their economy, so they introduced the new ideas or new activity that it was creation methods. I'm sure there we are together. Let's check one by one. In preservation, what they found in Africa, it is good and they preserved it or they kept it. Number 1, primitive tools of production. They found the Africans were using primitive tools of production. Example, in agriculture, they found we were using those hand hoe. So because they don't want to incur cost in production, in business they said, make sure you are using low cost in production in order to any profit in the market. So because they didn't want to get more cost in production, they found the Africans, they have tools of production, and those tools of production still they can give them the product they want. So they kept with those primitive tools of production. That's why even after independence, still the highest number of Africans, they were in hand hoe. So if Europeans, they were in need to make sure they are changing African life, why they didn't bring those tractors and the other machines in production? They left the majority of Africans in hand hoe, because it seems the hand hoe, it is cheap and is productive to them. So they preserved the use of primitive tools. Family labor. They found the Africans, that style in working as the family, especially they are from feudalism. So they found the Africans, they are working in a family level or in a family way. Meaning that all members of family were laborers in production. They found that is nice and they kept it even during colonialism. Another pre-colonial relation of production. In a pre-colonial relation of production, they found the Africans, they are doing their relation, example, the issue of Bugabile and Nyarubanja. They found all those styles are good for their interest. That is style, all those forms of relation of production are productive to their interest. They are giving good results or good feedback to them. So they maintained it. In destruction, what they destroyed. They destroyed a number of things that were established by Africans. Number 1, destruction of traditional agriculture, the issue of food crops, the issue of those crop rotation, intercropping, those traditional agriculture were not giving them the product they wanted. So they introduced the new agriculture that we're going to check there in creation. So they distracted the traditional agriculture because traditional agriculture didn't give them good product as they wanted. African local industries, to avoid competition among European goods and the African goods, they said we're supposed to kill or to eliminate African industries. And they used the very, very coercive apparatus or coercive ways. It was very brutal ways to end local industries. Sometime there in Congo, they chop out hands or they kill people, those who have the skills of making industries. Aim was to make sure Africans they are remaining dependent to the European manufactured goods and to avoid the competition in the market. Pre-colonial ration of production. And the next one was African culture. They distracted the African culture. African trade system. They took away barter trade system and they introduced the cash system or monetary system that we're using even up today. Creation method. What they created. Here we are checking the new things they made in Africa. Number one, creation of money system. We said it. The introduction of cash. They took away barter trade system. Introduction of taxes. It was the first time, although not first time, but previously was not paid as the way we started to pay in colonial economy. In pre-colonial, most of the time we done it was tributaries, but here in colonial economy, it is officiated as a tax. So African they started to pay tax. Land alienation, they took land from Africans for their agricultural activities. Creation of colonial labor. We got new idea of colonial labor. People were working for colonialists. Building of physical infrastructure. They built different physical infrastructures. So, in that way, before going to the sectors of colonial economy, here, before we check the creation method, here in the creation method, almost like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. In preservation point, distractions, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Pre-colonial ration in production that was mistaken. It's there in preservation, but in destruction we have 4 points. So 4 plus 5, we have almost like 9 points. And in preservation we have the 3 points. 9 plus 3, we have 12 points. Why am I counting this? I'm counting this so if you ask what were the methods used to introduce the colonial economy, do not start your hiding by preservation or what and what. Those preservation, destruction, and the preservation, destructions, and the creation. This might happen there in your introduction. You define what is colonial economy. You are stating those methods in general, and then you are starting highlighting one by one as here. So you say point number one, maybe instead of saying preservation and start highlighting the 3-1, you are starting dialect with the primitive tools. But remember there in your introduction you stated that they use the preservation, the creation, and the destruction. So number one is the primitive tool. Then inside of your paragraph you explain that was the among of the preservation method, family labor among of preservation method, or example in destruction you say destruction of traditional agriculture. It was among of the method in destruction methods. So that is how we are attempting the questions about the methods of creation or creating or introducing colonial economy in Africa. To get those number of points, require number of points. And then my friends or my students, we have these sectors of colonial economy. Sectors of colonial economy, you have number one, it is agriculture. Number 2, it is mining, trade and commerce, transport and communication, industries. These were the sectors of colonial economy. And that is the center of our topic. Meaning of the sector, features of the sector, impact of the sector in Africa. 3 things. Meaning of agriculture. If there's types, we'll check those types. Features of colonial agriculture. impact of colonial agriculture in Africa. For example, transport and communication, meaning of transport and communication, patterns of transport and communication, features of transport and communication, and the impact of transport and communication, as well as other sectors. So that this is the center of our topic. And today we are going to check the issue of agriculture. Agriculture. We mean colonial agriculture, not that pre-colonial agriculture, colonial agriculture. The same meaning, colonial agriculture, or the among of the system, type of colonial economy, which introduced as to solve the problem of raw material for European industries. Again, they say the branches of colonial agriculture. Colonial agriculture, students, it was divided into 3 categories. Category number 1, it was peasant agriculture, settler agriculture, and last was plantation agriculture. These were the sectors, many categories or branches of colonial agriculture. Remember, agriculture is 2 activities: keeping animals and the crop cultivation. But here in the concept of colonial economy, when we say agriculture, mainly we mean crop cultivation for the production of raw material or those cash crops. So those raw materials are produced either through peasant agriculture or settler agriculture and the plantation agriculture. Number 1, what is peasant agriculture? This was small-scale farming practice under the control of African families, whereby Africans were allowed to grow both cash crops and food crops in their own plots of land, basically smaller farms. So understand careful, because at the end you will be asked to differentiate among those types of agriculture, the difference between among peasant, plantation, and the settler. So in peasant, we said this is small scale agriculture. Number 2, it was done by Africans. Number 3, they do 2 crops at once, cash crops and the food crops. Why they done so? I'm sure mainly to make sure they are getting food for the other activities. If the whole place of Africa are planting crops, cash crops, where can we get the access of food crops? So to get food, peasant agriculture, it was used as a source of food. But not only food, sometimes they said, okay, you can use even in cash crops, especially after Great Economic Depression. Among of the reforms, they said the peasant agriculture, they were supposed to plant also cash crops. This agricultural practice was very dominant in the colonies of Uganda, Nigeria, Algeria, and Senegal. In Tanganyika, practiced in small areas like West Lake Province, Kilimanjaro, and Mbeya. So, countries that were mainly practiced this were Uganda, Nigeria, Algeria, and Senegal. In the cause of West Africa, we have only Uganda. So, Uganda in East Africa, it was one of the countries done in peasant agriculture. And there are the reasons why peasant agriculture in Uganda, not settler or not plantation. But in Tanganyika, we're going to check there. Tanganyika mainly, it was dominated by plantation agriculture, but smaller part of Tanganyika, as they said, Kilimanjaro and Mbeya, they practiced the peasant agriculture. But mainly, generally it's known as Tanganyika, under German and also under British, they were under plantation. Features of peasant agriculture. It was small scale form of agriculture, that's common. It means they practiced in a smaller plots. It was not a large scale like more than 100 hectares. It was a smaller size. It was cheaper than the other form of agriculture because no much investment was incurred. Because they are small scale, so the more you have small size of plot or small size of your farm, also the cost to control that is also small cost. That means cheap. You don't need a high number of laborers. You don't need a high number of those fertilizers and there's accessories. But when we have large scale, that actually is going to be expensive. So peasant, it was cheap because it was a smaller size. It was based on the production of both cash crops and the food crops. So cash crops for the trade and the food crops for consumptions. Simple tools were used in peasant agriculture. They never used the most advanced tools like the machines. Most of the time they used the simple tools in production. Actually, again, the reason because it was a small scale agriculture. Family was the basic unit of production. All members of family were the labor in the plant, in the agriculture. Example, when they said Kilimanjaro, when you go there in Kilimanjaro or there in Mbeya, in the morning, all members of the family are supposed to go to the farm. That means family was a basic unit of production. Did not involve scientific methods of farming, so most of the time they done local farming or traditional farming. The use of fertilizer, the use of scientific experiment or scientific techniques, it was not mainly practiced here or used here. Absence of land alienation in peasant agriculture. They never done land alienation because it was under Africans. As we said, the peasant agriculture, it was controlled by Africans. So Africans practiced it in their own land, meaning that there were no land alienation. Why peasant agriculture? Let's check the reasons why those areas practiced the peasant agriculture. Number one, dense population. So here, please make sure you're able to connect or to make the logic point. Example, when you say dense population, how dense population led to the peasant agriculture? In which way they see that dense population is the obstacle for the other form of agriculture like plantation and etc. So you should understand careful. As I said from the beginning, in Form 3 and Form 4, we have different level of questions comparing in Form 1 and Form 2. Most of questions here in Form 3 and Form 1 and Form 4, they want you to analyze, to discuss, to explain. That's the third level of questions. So make sure you are able to explain every concept in relation to the question. So example here, we are discussing why peasant agriculture, and the point number one is dense population. So the connection is, because of dense population, it was difficult to undergo land alienation. If they will opt to go land alienation, then they're going to create land conflict in the place. And also, they're going to make a scarcity of food in the place. In that way, those areas that had the limited land and the high population, it was difficult to do land alienation. Example, check the geographical feature of Uganda and check the size of Uganda and the population. So in that way, we can say Uganda during colonialism, they had the high population, and while also the land, it was limited. So it was difficult to say, let us divide these people, some of population go there, and this land should be free for us. In that way, you can create land conflict, and the colony will be in turmoil. So because of this population, they say the peasant is suitable. Centralized system. They applied the peasant agriculture in the place where a political system it was intensive centralized. And because it was intensive centralized, they said no need to bother or to disturb or to destroy that centralized system, because by using that centralized system, we can still get the impact, or we can get the product what we want. The solutions of our industrial demands also can be obtained under that centralized system. That's why most of centralized places, peasant agriculture was successful. Example, in Uganda, by using Buganda Kingdom, they used it to facilitate peasant agriculture, and also they got the product they wanted. Existence of cash crops production. In some areas, they found already missionaries started cash crops before full establishment of colonialism. Example, Algeria and Nigeria. Missionaries were already started the issue of cash crops. So what they done, it was difficult to abolish that cash crops. Although it was in a small scale, it was difficult to abolish it, so they kept it, they preserved it, and they said proceed with the peasant agriculture. Geographical features and climatic condition. Large-scale agriculture, it needs good climatic condition, because mainly we are planting cash crops. And most of cash crops, they need more years for them to be ready for the harvesting. So, example, coffee, it needs almost like 3 years, or maybe cotton, those number of years. So we need to have good geographical climatic condition. So different to peasant. In peasant, because of poor climatic condition, the condition does not sustain cash crops. If we invest high large-scale cash crops and we have uncertainty climatic condition, we have the chance to get loss in our production. So to avoid that loss because of poor climatic condition, they said, okay, we can't leave the land or the colony free because of this poor climatic condition. They try to have this small-scale agriculture for food and the cash crops. Expensiveness of settlers and plantation agriculture. In other places, it was high expensive to control that. But they said it's better to have peasant agriculture. Nature of African reactions. Nature of African reaction determined the kind of agriculture in this way. In the places where Africans reacted intensively, harsh, Europeans learned the lesson. Like in this place, even if we introduce a large-scale agriculture, sometimes we cannot win or we can't get the products as we need. So they said it's better to have small-scale agriculture to avoid the future risk or the distractions that might be caused by these Africans who usually resisting our existence. So because some areas they resisted intensively, after Europeans learned the lesson and they introduced the peasant agriculture that is simple, cheap, and small-scale agriculture. Mean that even if Africans will resist, they will not get high cost or high loss comparing if they will establish the peasant, etc. or large-scale agriculture. So these were the reasons why peasant agriculture, my friends. How colonial government favored the peasant agriculture in Uganda? This is their question. In Uganda, they provided the seeds. That's number one. Colonial government provided seeds in Uganda. Building of granaries. These were smaller industries for the processing some of goods. Some of crops. Building of transport system, example railway system, they built there in Uganda. And the use of agricultural expertise. They supported them by giving agricultural expertise, helping them into small problems in agriculture. That is how Uganda favored in peasant agriculture. So effects of peasant agriculture. Intensification of colonial exploitation. European exploited African deeply. One piece of land, food, and also you're supposed to produce what? Cash crops. Famine and hunger. The area where they planted the mainly cash crops and the food crops in low quantity led to the famine and hunger. And as we know, if you are doing intercropping, food crop and cash crops at once, there is a chance of land to lose its nutrients. So time to time, Africans start getting low level production because of that intercropping of cash crops and food crops. It influenced the development of monoculture economy. Because of peasant, they said it's better to have monoculture economy instead of mixing commodities. Social stratification. The social stratification is caused because of ownership of land and level of production. Those who don't have large piece of land, they quarreled with those who have land because they were becoming laborers. And also when the production is low, also it caused the social stratification or social classes. Then after peasant, then we have plantation agriculture. Plantation agriculture. Plantation agriculture, it's going by this. It was colonial large-scale farming system owned by and supervised by Europeans from abroad. It was done in various places in Africa with production of single crop. Example, in Tanganyika, it was sisal, single crop. Remember, it is large-scale agriculture. Belgium and Congo was specialized in rubber. Sudan was specialized in cotton. Guinea produced banana. Ivory Coast produced and Madagascar based on coffee. Zanzibar was cloves, and Mauritius produced the sugarcane. So you can see in every country they produced the single crop. So in that single crop, it was identification to that country. If you want to know about Tanganyika, it was mainly sisal. That is plantation. And the another case in plantation, they said it was owned by by Europeans but those Europeans were living in abroad. There is a point we are reaching. We should differentiate between plantation and the settler. All of them, they were owned by Europeans, but there is a smaller line of difference there. In a plantation, we said it's owned by Europeans, but these Europeans were not settling in Africa. These Europeans were in Europe. Then who controlled the farm in Africa? There was one man called the estate manager. This estate manager was a appointee of Europeans who controlled on behalf of Europeans. That was plantation. Then for today, let's check features of plantation agriculture, and we may proceed in next class. So number one, it was based on large-scale agriculture, or it was large-scale plantation, more than 100 hectares. It was owned by Europeans. These are very simple points you can explain. So the owner were Europeans, not Africans, because they done land alienation. It was labor intensive because of the size of the land or the size of the product, the size of project. They need a high number of laborers. Based on huge capital of investment, as it was a big project, it went hand to hand with the construction of infrastructure. All places where there is plantation agriculture, that place is connected by transport. Example, in Tanganyika, we done Saiso in Tanga and Saiso in Morogoro. All these areas were connected by railway. There is railway running from Dar es Salaam to Tanga, and also there were railway line from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro. Why from Dar es Salaam? Because the coast area for the exportation to outside and importation to inside. So all those areas that were doing plantation agriculture, producing cash crops, they were connected by infrastructure to facilitate transportation of different things. Example, laborers, medical personnel, those administrators, and mainly to transport raw material and the consumed or manufactured goods. It was monoculture production. In monoculture production, meant that they produced one crop. It based on one crop, and as we saw there in those countries, other countries were specialized in rubber, some in sugarcane, some in sisal, and some in cotton. That is the monoculture. My dear students, because of time and to make the lesson well understandable, it is better if we'll end here for today, and don't miss the coming class. We'll proceed about plantation agriculture. Ciao.